We'll go ahead and read our scripture for today as it does tie into this conversation. It comes from Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. Carry each other's burdens, and so you will fulfill the law of Christ. The word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. So this is Cheryl Edmonds. Cheryl, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up here at Lakeside?
Love to. Born and raised in Michigan, and quite happy in Michigan, except for that thing called winter. And my husband was given a promotion at work, and they said, oh, by the way, you have to leave Michigan and move to Florida. I said, where in Florida? They said, Lake Mary. I said, never heard of it. So we arrived in Sanford, 2009, so we've been here for a while. And we, of course, began the search for a church. I was fairly active in my church in Michigan, the United Methodist Church, which is where I trained to be a Stephen minister. And into 2 years, we were starting to ask ourselves, why is it so hard to find a church that suited our needs? And one Sunday, we happened into Lakeside United Methodist, and it was Dan's first day of preaching here. And we left and looked at each other in the car and said, yeah, I think we could go back there. So we've been here ever since.
That's awesome. Not that she said it was me. It was awesome that they found a church home here. Cheryl, tell us what Stephen Ministry is, and maybe sometimes more importantly, what it is not.
My mother always had a saying, and she would say, Cheryl, don't be down on what you're not up on. The first
Sounds like a hip cat.
Oh, she's cool. Still is cool, 94. She had a good point, because the first time I ever heard the word Stephen Minister was from a girlfriend, and she said, you know, Cheryl, I think this afternoon I'm going to call my Stephen Minister to come by the house. I said, what's a Stephen Minister? And she said, well, it's just someone from the church that comes and sits with me and talks with me and makes me feel better. I said, well, is she a trained minister? Did she go to seminary? No. I said, well, is she a counselor, qualified to sit with you? And she goes, well, no, she's not a counselor. And I remember leaving that day going, this sounds like a hocus pocus church that has something like this. But lo and behold, the next year, my church rolled out the Stephen Ministry program, and I paid a little closer attention now. And after several nudges from various friends in the church, I decided to go for the training, which was a life-changing experience for me. I loved the training, and it's actually helped me with all my relationships ever since then.
Yeah, so it's lay people in the church who are trained to walk with you through seasons of life where that would be helpful. And again, it's not a counselor, so it's kind of, you don't need therapy. It's not something super, super heavy. But there are things in life that we just walk through that we need someone to come with us alongside of. And I think it's just such a valuable program for a church, and particularly so helpful to clergy, because obviously, like, pastoral care is vitally important, and my door is open to you, my email inbox is open to you, my calendar is largely available to you. But there also comes a point in time where I'm like, okay, if we can't wrap this up in 1 or 2 meetings, I'm going to have to hand you off to someone who can walk alongside of you for the long haul. And this is one of the blessings of Stephen Ministers, is I don't have to just Google therapist in town and hope I can figure out a good one. I know people here in this congregation who have received a measure of training and who are good at listening and asking questions. And so they're not a counselor, but what kind of training do you go through? Because it's not just like someone who, hey, you're a good listener, you're suddenly a Stephen minister. What does the training look like? What kind of values do you hold? What elements of counseling come into Stephen ministry that might be important for us if we're going to share our lives with these folks?
Well, the Stephen ministry training is quite in depth. We're trained to truly listen and pray with that person, but during the training that takes, I think the total hours now is 50 hours, you're actually taught to listen to that person, how to ask questions in a way that helps that person share some of their feelings. In the training, there's a combination of videos and training sessions and even role play, which is very, very helpful. And the training is one of those things that if you can do it in person, I highly recommend it. Being with a small group of people learning the same things that you're learning and going through it can be helpful, and then you support each other even after the training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you all value things like confidentiality, right? So you're not going to sit with someone and then go in the lobby and be like, did you hear what Mark told me this week?
So I think the biggest thing, confidentiality, but also no judgment. There's absolutely no judgment about what you're going through. We will not rush you. If we think that you're supposed to get through grief or anger in 3 weeks and you're at 3.2, as long as you need for as much time as it takes, we're there for you.
So what kind of things might folks be going through that would be a good candidate for a Stephen ministry relationship?
I'd have to say the obvious one is grief. I think a more common thing in this day and age is divorce. But I really think that there's anything in your life that feels heavy. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you're a recent widow or widower that has not really found someone that you feel comfortable continuing to talk to. You could be having a spiritual crisis, and a Stephen minister could be of help to you.
Yeah. Some situations I might think of that might be relevant here is folks who are suddenly empty nesters. You've had a certain individual or individuals in your house for close to 20 years, and suddenly they're gone, and what does life look like? I know we have a lot of folks who are caring for aging parents or other individuals in their family, and that's a heavy load. I see that in my own family.
And my son and daughter-in-law took my grandchildren and moved to Chicago.
There you go.
I wanted them to leave the kids with me, and they said no. It's hard. It was hard.
Yeah. Job transitions. If you're new to town, maybe you're new to town and you're trying to find a place to make a connection. Cheryl, you told an amazing story in the first service about a time where a ministry like this helped you. Would you mind sharing that story again?
Yeah. As I shared this morning, it's a personal story, so there's parts of this that are hard for me to share. I have a brother who I love dearly. His name's John. John married a girl named Cheryl, which I think is brilliant because I tell him every night before you go to bed, you have to say, I love you, Cheryl. They are very important to my husband, Pete, and I. And they had a daughter named Camry, born about the same time my youngest son was. We lived nearby each other. Our kids grew up together. Cheryl and I actually owned a small business together for a time. And everything was just great. The kids grew up. Camry met a boy named Steve, fell in love, got married. They were expecting their first child. And during Camry's pregnancy, Pete received news that we were going to be moving to Florida. So, of course, you keep in touch, as you do, phone, FaceTime. And we were awaiting the birth of their new son to come. And the phone rang. It was my brother. I didn't think much of it. But he was tearful on the other end. Camry had the doctors miss a condition called preeclampsia. They had taken her into the hospital where she suffered a grand mal seizure and a stroke, and they weren't sure they could do any more for her. So he was calling to ask for prayers. The good news is Camry lived, and Gavin was born 4 pounds, 1 ounce at 29 weeks. But we didn't know the outcome or the result of the stroke. So we waited and we prayed, and I have to tell you, I know my sister-in-law Cheryl is one of the greatest prayer warriors I've ever met. It became apparent that Camry did not remember her dad. She didn't remember that she was pregnant, and she didn't understand why they kept putting a baby in her arms. So Steve was at work when this happened, so when the husband came and they sent him into the room, they said, just go easy. We don't know what she remembers. And he took Camry's hand, and he said, Camry, do you know who I am? And she looked at him and she says, no, but I know I love you. And that gave him hope that someday what her head couldn't remember and her heart did, they could somehow meet in the middle. So life goes on. I mean, Camry came home from the hospital Steve had to go back to work and pay the bills, and John and Cheryl brought home the new baby and also their 24-year-old daughter, both in diapers. Day and night, they took care of them. Like I said, Steve had to go to work. And as life went on, it got to the point where Steve would come and pick up Camry and Gavin at night, take them home, and then bring them back in the morning. Cheryl did all of the doctor's appointments. I mean, taking a newborn and your daughter to the University of Michigan 3 times a week, looking and hoping for an answer. 2 brain surgeries later, Camry has a bit of memory back. She can use her phone to remind herself who Aunt Cheryl is, her favorite. And it was one of those things where I knew it was hard, but you just keep going. And my sister-in-law did a wonderful job of taking care of him. Gavin is a great, handsome 12-year-old boy today. He's amazing. And Mo, you should see this kid swing a driver. He's an amazing golfer. But during that time, my sister-in-law, that was, doing everything in her power to help, became more and more aware of her anxiety was increasing, OCD was increasing. And the truth is that on that day that Gavin was born, my brother and my sister-in-law lost a daughter. She would never be the same as the girl that they raised and loved. But there was no funeral. There was no visitation. There were no neighbors lining up on the front porch to help. They just got through with prayer, and they sought counseling, they sought medication, and it wasn't until this last March, so now, like I said, it's been 12 years, John and Cheryl came for their annual visit, and the boys always go to bed, and Cheryl and I sit up and have couch time. And Cheryl shared with me something that I'm sorry I missed myself, but she said, Cheryl, I have not felt peaceful joy since that day Gavin was born. And he brings me great joy, but I lost a daughter. And I thought, wow, I'm going to give you a phone number. It's the phone number of the United Methodist Church. Ask for somebody on the Stephen ministry team to come talk to you. Well, that was March. By April, I'm getting text messages and phone calls saying, I feel better. I woke up today and felt joy. I woke up today and thanked God instead of begging God for what I needed. And obviously, my brother too, I've had phone calls saying, oh my gosh, I have my happy wife back. Everybody's doing well. They're married. That experience taught me that a Stephen minister can be such the hands and feet of Christ. It also doesn't have to be as catastrophic as something like my family went through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that does bring us back to today's scripture. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. How do you see Stephen ministry, either in general or in that story, being the presence and activity of Christ?
I really see it as Stephen minister is the hands and feet of Christ. Literally, they can come to your house. They can hold your hand. They can give you a hug. Maybe you haven't had a hug for a year or more. But it also helps our church family know that you never, ever have to go through something alone. If there's somebody there that can sort of give strength to this church family by knowing that we're stronger together, that's what the Stephen ministry team can do.
I'm curious, and if you're comfortable, you can raise a hand. I know you're Methodist, so you can just keep them down if you want. But how many of you have ever gone through something in life where having someone walking with you helped you get through? How many of you have been through a situation or are in one now where you wish you had had somebody?
Yeah.
One of the unique things about Stephen ministry is it's this measure of, it's personal enough because it's a lay person at your church or a nearby church. We have connections with other churches as well. but they're not your family member, and they're not your pastor. Because there are some things we go through in life that we feel like we need someone to walk alongside of with, but I also don't want them every year at Thanksgiving being like, so are you over it yet? You know, or that thing that you're maybe just not comfortable vocalizing to your pastor or to a close friend. Yeah. And you need someone that's like proximally close to you. They're not just a random therapist, but there's also that measure of distance and
privacy.
Yeah, and privacy, exactly. Yeah.
And without judgment.
Without judgment.
I think people hesitate sometimes to call us because of the privacy issue, but also maybe of an embarrassment issue. Yeah. There is no judgment.
Absolutely.
No.
So we'll talk a little bit about the process. Maybe you're thinking, oh, this is something I could use, or a friend of mine can use, or this is something I want to put in my back pocket for later. It is something that you need to request, or if you refer someone to me, I am going to ask them. You will not just get a call out of the blue from a Stephen minister. Lamar's not going to call you and say, Pastor Dan thought you looked sad on Sunday. Are you doing okay? Like, we're not going to spring it on you. It is something that you ask for. But they will also then make an initial contact, ask what you're going through and what kind of person you're interested in talking about. What are some of the setup questions to help try to find the best match?
Well, first of all, the Stephen ministry team really uses prayer to help match. As our Stephen ministry team is growing, I can already see different strengths in different people. And then when a care receiver has come to us through Pastor Dan, there is prayerful consideration given to what that person is going through, who they may need. We also only pair men with men, women with women. So if a man's going through a divorce, it obviously makes more sense that he can sit and speak to a Stephen minister that's a man. And most of the time, God helps us get it right.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big reasons that people reach out is for grief. And it can be really helpful to have a one-on-one relationship. But we've also recently launched a grief group here, if it's something you're maybe more comfortable processing or interested in processing in a group. They kicked off for the first time just 2 weeks ago, so you really haven't missed anything. They meet for the next time tomorrow night at 6:30 in the Robertson House. It's every other Monday. Cheryl and Mo co-lead the group. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that class and what are the benefits of maybe doing it in a group versus being one-on-one, and or how do you know which is right for you? Yeah.
A number of years ago, I started a little get-together in our neighborhood, and it was people that were all caring for someone that was older. A couple of people had husbands with Alzheimer's. And I thought I had something to teach them. But I learned on the first week, they didn't need anybody to teach them anything. They needed people to sit and listen with them. And we got together for 7 years, once a week, in my living room, and they just talked. If they didn't want to talk, they didn't have to talk. And since that time, I've experienced the death of a sister that's very close to me. And there's some magical time period that people think, okay, it's been a year, Cheryl, you need to get over it. She was your sister, not your spouse, your child. And no, I was not over it. And the number of people that want to listen to you tell stories about your loved one or share something that you saw that brought a tear to your eye, they start to dry up. And then you can feel actually guilty wanting to continue to talk about your loved one. So we get together and we share if we want to, and everybody comes from a different place. Who you lost or how you lost them can make a difference too. But it's awful nice to sit in a group of people that are also going through it and don't have any expectations about how you should grieve or how long you should grieve.
Yeah. And it also doesn't just need to be, I lost someone in the last 6 months.
No.
You know, grief can be something that takes an endless amount of time to process. It's something that you continue to live with. I've also done plenty of funerals where we wrap up and we're saying goodbye and they're like, no, we're great, we're good, thank you. It was beautiful. Okay, awesome. Well, call me when it's not beautiful, because like you're right now thinking about the estate and you've just planned a big event and you want to honor them and all these things. But then like that day comes where the person that called you every day didn't call you to see how you're doing, or the text message didn't come in, or you realize a couple years down the road that you didn't process something, or something new happens that reopens an experience. And so there's no expiration date on grief, and there's no expiration date on the need for a group like that. You also kind of, jokingly said, if you end up being the only one talking in that group session, we might refer you to a Stephen minister.
Yes. Yeah. There may be a time at the beginning stages of grief where you do want someone every week or twice a week or just someone on the phone. But as you go through the grief journey, it takes twists and turns, and it evolves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of helpful to go through and sit in a room with people that they survived it, and it took a while. I can survive it. There's some value to that too.
And hopefully almost everything, if not everything we do here is a God thing. But this is one of those things where about a year ago, Cheryl said, "Can I have coffee? I'm really ready to dig in." And I said, "What have you done?" And she mentioned her grief work. And over the last 18 months, we haven't gone a month, and there was a stretch there where it felt like we didn't go a week without someone in our congregation losing an older parent or a sibling or a spouse, or going through some other aspect of life that causes grief. And I didn't know what to do with that. And so then to have, Cheryl say, "This is what I do," it just seemed like this is so needed. And so if you're thinking about coming, but you're like, "I don't know, I don't really want to be in a room, and there's only like 3 of us," the need is here. And if you have that need, I would love for you to take advantage of it.
Sometimes 3 is better than 13.
That's true. That is also true. Yeah. And so the last thing is, some of you may also be listening and thinking, what if that's a way I could serve? What if I'm the one that everyone comes to when they have a problem? What if I'm the one that everyone says, "You're a really good listener," or "You ask good questions"? And I will admit that sometimes I hear something like, "It takes 50 hours of training," and I think, our congregation's too busy. Our congregation's too busy. I don't want to rule that out for you. I've done that for too long. Some of you are too busy, but you'll make space because you feel God's calling you to it. And then some of you are not too busy. And sometimes the best things in life require that kind of training. And I would feel uncomfortable connecting you with a Stephen minister if they took a 1-hour class. Like, that's fine for teaching kids how to read at elementary school. We did that last Sunday. It's going to be great. We're going to change the world. Yeah. But if you're going to walk with someone through grief, divorce, all these kinds of things, the training's really important. So do you want to share any more, or just remind them what to do if they're interested in learning more about becoming a Stephen minister?
Yes, pretty much the same way. You can approach me, or you can call the church office and talk to Pastor Dan. There is 2 trainings that we have been waiting for. Lamar's been working on this for a while. There's one that will be in person starting in January. We already have actually 2 people from the church that are interested in taking that training, and we may work out something where there's a carpool ability to go to the training. Then there is another one being talked about in the fall that may come together. So if you could get in touch with you or myself, we'll put you in touch with Lamar, and he can give you the details of the training.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I want to share is, obviously, when Paul wrote, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ," he wasn't writing this to Stephen ministers. He was writing this to the church, specifically the church in Galatia, but through the power of the Holy Spirit and the Bible, Paul was writing it to all of us. And carrying one another's burdens is yet another way that we make faith feel like home here at Lakeside. I don't want any of you to feel like this is the kind of church where when you walk in, you have to be happy, you have to have it all put together, your shirt has to be ironed. I don't iron my shirts anymore. I just blame it on the seatbelt and oh my gosh, the seatbelt wrinkled my shirt. I'm just out of time, you know what I'm saying? You do not have to have it all together to be here at Lakeside. And if we're going to be a room full of people who are willing to admit we don't have it all together, we also need to be a family of people who are willing to say, "I am here to help you carry your burdens." Can we do that? Let's thank Cheryl for her time and for sharing. Thank you.